Plan Board to order. Thank you all for bearing with us for a few minutes. We are awaiting the arrival of a couple of board members that we think will be here in a few minutes. Ms. McMullen, can you go ahead and start with the roll call?
Ackerman?
Here.
Sutton?
Here.
Newman?
Here.
Hawkins?
Here.
Blythe is absent. Hurst, absent, running late. Corrigetto?
Here.
All right. We have a quorum.
Okay, and then can we have an adoption of the agenda? The only possible change is I don't think the two people are here for the recognition today, so we may bump that to next month.
We adopt the agenda.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving forward, we have the approval of the minutes.
I have a comment on the minutes. I did make an update. Board Member Hawkins let me know of something that I had left out last month. So the minutes that are printed out for you are the updated minutes there, and it was an update on a motion on the Heritage Overlay District item.
Okay, thank you. With that update, can we get a motion to approve the minutes?
I move approval of the revised minutes as presented.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Mr. Newman, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Oh, carries unanimously. Ms. McMullen, can you read the announcement into the record for us, please?
Yes. Section 30-3.3 of the Land Development Code establishes the Plan Board, including its membership, rules of procedure and functions, powers, and duties. The Plan Board is advisory to the City Commission on most planning petitions. Appeals of Plan Board decisions concerning special use permits are to a hearing officer within 30 calendar days of the decision. See Section 30-3.58C of the Land Development Code. The procedure for an appeal is set forth in Section 30-3.58.
Thank you. Are there any requests to address the board for items not on our agenda this evening by anyone in the room? Okay, and are there any, is there anyone on the phone line?
No, Madam Chair, there's nobody on the lines at this time.
Okay, and anyone on Zoom? No? Okay, great. We're going to skip over the next item, the recognition for Ms. Condon and Ms. Walker-Radke, with the hope that they will come join us in person next month. And with that, we'll go on to old business. Ms. McMullen, can you read this item into the record?
Yes. First item under old business, determination of status of a legally non-conforming use for a property located in the U8 transect zone located at 1516 North Main Street. And for this application, the property owners did submit additional evidence. This was heard at last month's Plan Board meeting, and it was continued to give the property owners an opportunity to provide additional evidence in writing. So all of that backup has been made available to you, and they are here tonight to talk about the continuation of that item.
Okay. Does staff have any presentation that you're going to give, or should we just go straight to the...
Yeah,
okay.
no presentation.
Okay, so if the landowner would like to step forward. Good evening, everyone.
So I guess you have everything now in front of you, so we can continue on this. To review, our objective is just to keep that non-conforming use at 1516 North Main Street to allow the vehicle sales with display. We attached to the email that we sent you the commercial lease from the owner, Mrs. Lewis, and also the extension, what went through May of 2021, which is actually this month. So you now have that in front of you. And then we have the copies of those GRU bills that we talked about. And each of those, March through September. And we talked about the drop in the electrical usage. And one thing that we did not discuss at all last month was COVID, where CDC and the White House asked everyone to stay home. So if you look at that, you can see on the September graph on the last page a real correlation between their announcement asking everyone to stay home, including city workers, March all the way through September, there's a little bit of a spike in July. I don't know if it's air conditioning or whatnot. And then also in September, which is when they moved out, so that might have been their cleanup stage or something. And you may even ask why stay all of those months after they had lost their license, but it was a buy here, pay here, you have to remember. So they were open, receiving payments from their customers. At that time is, one very logical reason. And I honestly think that this in itself is enough evidence to suffice that the property was not abandoned during those months. But we did try to get more for you. We did search out the manager of the property and have a signed notarized statement from him stating he was there until September 28th. As we mentioned last month, but you were unable to see, you now have the statement from the landlord saying that she believes the tenant was there until at least August. And that correlates again to those GRU bills. And then we went to the neighbors to speak with them. We have a statement from Auto Plaza, which is at 2222 North Main, and they stated they believe they were conducting business till August. Tire Outlets, pretty much almost next door at 1320. They said they believe they were active till September. Gator City at 1700 next door, said they believe it was August or September they were there. Magic Imports number 8 at 1725, said September 20th they believe they were in operation. And you have all of these notarized statements. First Place a little bit further south, 638, said they believe they were there till about August or September. Next Generation at 2202, said they believe they're operating till August or September. And then at the end, we have the photos that we talked a little bit about up to May of 2020. Again, perhaps the lack of advertising after that we talked about, maybe their volunteer quit at that point, and also might have been just because of the uncertain times, lack of advertising for many of us during the COVID time. And then we have the photo that was submitted by staff from Google Maps showing the lot full. And then we have the other photo displaying the cars for sale. And, with that lot being full at that time, we honestly believe that it would take at least a minimum of 3 months, because you have to remember there was, of course, decreased foot traffic. The auto auctions were closed for in-person sales. So, we're assuming it took at least 3 months, which that also correlates to the neighbors' statements that if that was April, May, you have June, July, August, correlates to the neighbor statements, correlates to the GRU bills, that they would remained open during that time. And then we have Mr. Wilfred coming in for December 2020. So we believe we've taken on the burden to present all the relative evidence to establish that the use has not been abandoned, and we therefore ask you to issue a permit with a non-abandoned usage to allow the outdoor display of vehicles. Thank you so much. If there's any questions?
Thank you for the additional documentation. Does anyone on the board have questions?
Somebody tell me what our dates are. What are the critical dates we have to have?
Madam Chair, so the city's land development code sets a abandonment timeline at 9 months. So essentially, if the use has ceased, and again, it is important to note that we're talking about the use of the property, in this case, auto sales, which is an allowed use under the zoning. It's the outdoor display that we're talking about. So if that outdoor display use ceases for a period of 9 months, then that use is deemed abandoned by the land development code, and we have to bring this forward to the plan board, and the owner has to bear the burden of proof to show that the use has not been abandoned. So that's where the decision point from the board is tonight, and as it was before, is weighing all the evidence you heard do you feel that the use was abandoned? If so, if not, then there's no permit. You just essentially make that as part of your findings as a motion. So.
And I believe for the timeline as well, we began looking at this in the beginning of March.
Mm-hmm.
So that would probably be that's a good benchmark.
Okay, so March is our cutoff period. They have to be 9 months prior to March of
2021.
2021.
Yes.
And I believe at the last month meeting, the attorney stated he contacted you in February.
Okay, so it might have been at the end of February.
Well, I also remember, and I don't think we have it in the packet, in this backup, but there was something in the code about from the date that the lease was signed, and that may have been the February date, because we couldn't count that time. Or not the lease, like the contract to purchase.
Right.
So we couldn't count that time against them. So it was
Right.
really from the time that they had signed the contract.
Right. There is a provision as you indicated, that when the property's changing hands,
Mhm.
that
There's a pause.
Yeah, there's a total.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Hawkins, did you have something? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Do we want to do board member comment first, or see if there's anyone from the public? Is there anyone else that would like to speak, sir? Okay. Do we have anyone on the phone lines for this item? We'll go ahead and take public comment if there's anyone that would like to speak to this item.
No, Madam Chair, there's nobody on the phones at this time. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, bringing it back to the board then for discussion or motion.
Would anyone like for me to put up maybe that code section on the screen, or let me know if there's anything I can pull up that might be helpful?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to share that I'm not in favor of the request, and my reasons for not being in favor of the request are the amount of thought we've put into the comp plan policies restricting automobile dealerships without door display and storage to North Main Street, north of 16th Avenue. The amount of attention we put into the form-based code to look at the ways that we're designing some of these uses that detract from the pedestrian realm and the urban environment. And then looking at the evidence, I don't see that it's persuasive. We don't see receipts, we don't see invoices, we don't see evidence of registration, and we don't see copies of those documents that are produced by the state when transactions for automobiles occur. I appreciate that the applicant or the requester went to the length of providing the affidavits, but every single one is extremely general. Someone says that to the best of their recollection, something happened 9 months ago, but without giving detail as to why they believe that's the case. For example, I was there on this date and had this experience and recall that date being this date for this reason. So I simply don't find them persuasive. So that's where I am. But I'll refrain from making a motion until I hear more from my colleagues.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Mr. Newman, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little bit conflicted. I agree, but I would like to see some different type of evidence that it actually was functioning as that at that point in time. I do think, though, in the fact that it's something, we have been in a pandemic. There are some things that have been going on that, may or may not have had some influence. I understand that of what the city wants to try to sort of accomplish. I don't know, I just kind of feel like, and maybe for this kind of thing, I don't know, I just feel like it might be something that we just need to recognize and just not take away their use at this point in time.
Mr. Ackerman?
I agree with Mr. Newman. I think it's close.
As far as whether the 9 months has been achieved, it's obviously a little bit obscure when, particularly during pandemic times, that we've managed to wind this thing down. And if we had the contract for sale in February, they've got activity in August and September. It seems like we're definitely close enough. I'd be in favor of extending the use. I understand the city's interest in getting rid of non-conforming uses, and I generally approve of that. But I don't think we're going to do major damage to the city's long-term plans by doing this. I would vote in favor of finding that the use continues.
Any other comments? I would lean towards Mr. Newman and Mr. Ackerman's position. I think a lot of businesses were forced to shut down in March, and I doubt that those cars disappeared from the lot overnight. So, you know, the business may not have been functioning, but a lot of other businesses weren't functioning. We sort of took a pause, if you will, and so I think, you know, I agree it's not completely conclusive evidence, but just thinking through what that year was like, I imagine that it took them into the summer months to sort of come back and clean up and finish, you know, the business that they had on that property. Everyone had a really tough year. I think it was really hard to document things, and everyone was dealing with a lot. So I don't, want to hold that against the new property owner that wasn't invested in the property at all at that time. I think they've made a good effort. I think, giving them the benefit of the doubt, acknowledging that it was a pandemic, I'm willing to vote to continue the use on the property. So, Mr. Newman?
I'll make a motion.
It's on page 2,
Yes.
under old business.
Yes. So there you go. Right there. Oh, there you go.
Or there's actually like a recommendation here, whether to make a decision, if you go to page 3.
Yep. I'm going to make a motion that the property, that it is, sorry, I'm trying to remember whether or not I make a motion that, or that we find that it has not been abandoned, and then therefore that they can continue with their permitted use.
Okay, do we have a second for that
Second.
motion? Mr. Ackerman for second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so Mr. Hawkins opposed. You abstained? Oh, Mr. Hurst abstained. So we had 4 for, 1 opposed, and 1 abstained. Yep, okay, thank you, and thank you for gathering that additional information for us, and good luck with your business on the site. Moving on to new business, Ms. McMullen, can you read the next item into the record?
All right, first item under new business, petition PB-21-55 LUC, Lincoln Ventures LLC agent, petition for land use change from City of Gainesville Urban Mixed Use High Intensity UMUH to City of Gainesville Planned Use District PUD, generally located at the southwest corner of West University Avenue and Southwest 12th Street, related to petition PB-21-57ZON.
Madam Chair, before Brittany gets into their, or Ms. McMullen gets into her presentation, I did want to say a couple of words. It's not usual where I think from a staff perspective, like we get kind of really excited about a project, and I think this is one that I think highlights how creative partnerships can bring about much better projects, I think, than maybe the city or private development could deliver on their own. And I think you'll hear tonight some of the sort of thought and creative sort of problem solving that went into bringing this before you for consideration. So,
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, good evening. Brittany McMullen, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. The property in question here is located at the southwest corner of West University Ave and Southwest 12th Street. It is about 0.945 acres in size, so slightly less than an acre. The existing land use of the property is urban mixed use high intensity. This land use category allows up to 100 dwelling units per acre by right, or 125 units per acre with special use permit approval. So the request is to amend the future land use from urban mixed use high intensity to planned use district. Oh, and I meant to mention on this slide the surrounding land use categories. So the surrounding land use categories are largely UH to the north, south, east, and west, with the exception of MUR, mixed use residential. So taking a closer look at the location of the property, it is located on West University Avenue, in very close proximity to the University of Florida, as well as the Publix and the Target and CVS on Northwest 13th Street. So it's located within walking distance to a large employment center, as well as other important destinations. It's also located within close proximity to two historic districts. In particular, a portion of the property is located within 100 feet of the University Heights South Historic District that you see to the south there. So the code requires that new construction within 100 feet of this district be limited to 4 stories in height. So the proposed PUD conditions address the density and intensity at the property. So it calls out the number of allowable units and bedrooms as 151 units and 506 bedrooms. So this is an increase over the allowable density and bedrooms currently allowed at the property based on the zoning, as well as the UF context area overlay district, or overlay, which limits the number of bedrooms, and that's limited by a calculation of 2.75 times the allowable density. So the request would increase the allowable number of units and bedrooms. The conditions also call out that the height of the structure will be limited to 10 stories for the portion that falls outside of that 100-foot University Heights Historic District buffer. And so the PUD proposes to maintain that code requirement of limiting the portion of the building within that 100 feet to 4 stories in height. It also limits the non-residential uses at the site to 6,500 square feet, so that's a decrease in what's currently allowed given the existing land use. Another unique condition of this PUD is that 10% of the units will be required to be maintained as permanent affordable housing units for qualified tenants. So qualified tenants will be defined as those earning between 50 and 80% of the Gainesville area median income, and the affordable units are required to be constructed such that all finishes are the same as market rate units. Tenants of these units must have access to all of the same amenities, and the property owner has been working with the Gainesville Housing Authority on a memorandum of understanding to further solidify the affordable housing units, and to work with the GHA on placing tenants within the affordable units. And I know that the applicant can talk a little bit more about that. So just some more conditions regarding the affordable units there. So staff has reviewed the petition in regards to review criteria, and does find that the application meets the review criteria. The proposed land use change will support infill development goals of the comprehensive plan, and the PUD land use category will be compatible with the high density and intensity future land use designations in close proximity to the property. The change will support both private and nonprofit housing sector to develop and maintain housing for low and very low income households within the core of the city. Additionally, the change will support the use of housing subsidy vouchers within new market rate development through direct coordination with the Gainesville Housing Authority, and will help connect affordable housing units within the development with their clients waiting for affordable housing. And the next petition that we'll hear, the PD zoning, will get into a little bit more detail on the site layout and the design of the proposed development. But with that, that concludes my presentation for the future land use. And staff does recommend approval of the request, and the applicant is here with a presentation as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff before we go to the applicant?
That 6,500. I don't know where things are.
I know.
The 6,500 square feet of non-residential, I'm assuming that's like a retail office component at the bottom, ground floor?
Yes, on the ground floor. So commercial, yeah, on the ground floor.
And I think as you hear probably from the applicant's presentation, they have a little bit of a different model than some of the other mixed-use projects that we've seen, where they actually fill that space with a sort of designated user, as opposed to like leasing it out to.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, then the applicant, please step up. Mr. Diedenbach.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We're gonna try. Does the dot camera work anymore, Scott?
Yeah, I think she just used it a minute ago.
Okay. Because I was on the Zoom and I was just going to share and broadcast from the Zoom, but as soon as Brittany started doing her presentation, the Zoom kicked me off. So I'll move it over, Scott.
It's shockingly clear.
If you want to zoom in just a scotch. Supersonic. And I have a jump drive. I've got backups. So, trying to get back to the good old days of live presentations and when everything was electronic. So, good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all and not be this big on my TV screen at home, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on there. My name is Jerry Diedenbach, and I have the pleasure of being here tonight to do something that I don't think anyone has done before, and that is to bring a workforce housing component to the city of Gainesville in a project as an inclusionary zoning item. I'm not here alone, though. I am here with Patrice Boyce, our land use attorney on this, and nothing happens without Ryan here. He's always in the background, but you know he's the one who's doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the day-to-day interactions of writing the applications. And also, I have the esteemed pleasure of being here with Malcolm Kiner from the Gainesville Housing Authority. And I am really excited to let you know that on Tuesday, their board unanimously approved a memorandum of understanding to enter into a perpetual agreement with us to provide us with tenants for this building. So I'm going to go through this presentation. We generally will talk about land use and zoning somewhat together because they are interlinked, of course. One decision before you this evening is legislative in nature, the small-scale land use, and I will say it is a small-scale land use, 0.94 acres, less than 1 acre in size, and then it has a companion zoning element to it. So our request before you tonight is a small-scale land use amendment to take the mixed-use high-intensity land use and apply a planned use district, or PUD, on top of 0.94 acres in the city of Gainesville. Complementing that, and the site, as you can see, outlined here in green, the site is on West University Avenue. Some of you who have been here long enough remember it used to be a bookstore, and then it was a bike shop, and then it was something else, and a hardware store. Now it has a lot of screening on the windows because it's advertisement and it's an empty building. But there's also a few other buildings in there. There's a smoke shop. Felipe's Tacos is on the end where the Mellow Mushroom used to be, and before that there were additional uses. We're seeking to have a planned development put on the property to complement the PUD. Our intent is to redevelop the site with a mixed-use, multi-story building. So on 1 acre, we are going to obviously go vertical with this and have a ground floor that has retail and service type uses on it. To accommodate the guests, residents, tenants, and patrons, we are going to have a structured parking garage component in here. And I'm happy to report tonight that this geometry of this site does not require a right-of-way vacation. We're fitting everything in roughly about 95 feet from University Avenue South and about 210 feet east to west. And you can see, here's the old Mellow Mushroom right here on the west side. There's the bookstore at the far west side here. And there's an old building in there. You used to sell baseball cards and Tom's Used Grooves if you go back that far. Ground floor commercial offerings will not open empty, though. Our program is actually going to start a coffee shop that is interlinked to the corporate entity here. That can be turned over later, but we are not going to create vacant glass space on University Avenue this close to the university and our central core activity area here. We are greatly going to enhance the urban pedestrian streetscape. If you've ever walked from the corner past the slice store, past bistro, past all those businesses, you know that there are curb cuts everywhere along there. We are closing all the curb cuts, and we are going to have contiguous sidewalk along the entire frontage, improving the safety for pedestrians and cyclists, and actually delineating, consistent with the transect zones, the urban realm there. And most importantly, and the one I'm most excited about tonight, is we are going to have both market rate housing as well as workforce rate housing. And Malcolm's going to talk about that in just a little bit. The opportunities that this represents here is we're really going to get what we call the highest and best use out of that land. If you look at it today, a lot of those businesses are closed. A lot of those buildings are tremendously old and are not functioning in the best use the block away from the University of Florida. This block touches 13th Street. So in this location, as you all know, it's imperative that we work on the pedestrian realm and improve safety in this portion of the urban core, both in the form of the outdoor realm and the urban pedestrian realm, as well as how vehicles interact through this area. This also will allow us to increase the housing supply right across the street from campus, and the housing diversity by bringing workforce units right across the street from campus, our largest employer here in Alachua County and in the core of the city's urban center. And then lastly, what we feel that this will really do by having an inclusionary zoning element in it, it will present access to opportunities to Gainesville's broader population. So many times I've heard from this dais on a Thursday night, if it's the commission, or the dais across the street when it's a Tuesday, we want to have affordable housing, we want to have a workforce housing element, but we don't want it just all tucked away in East Gainesville. We don't want it hidden somewhere. This is actually going to give people the opportunity to live close to campus and interact with each other, to mentor each other, to become friends and tutors and workout partners. All of the units in the building have the exact same amenitization, meaning hard countertops, stainless steel appliances, security cameras, and an access to all the different elements, whether it be the pool, the recreational facilities, the coffee shop. Everyone lives in equality in this project. As a bit of the technical background, we held the public workshop for this. We issued a public notification, direct mailing to everyone within 400 feet. We placed an ad in the Gainesville Sun, the information source of largest circulation here in Gainesville, and we held the neighborhood workshop, and nobody came. That happens. I had a couple people that called me after the fact that said, hey, what you doing? You're next to the hub. Clay Swagger called me and said, what's your building plan look like? As we continue to work, and Clay and I talked about it yesterday a little bit, but nobody came to this. What we told people, though, we did conduct the workshop and archived it on our CHW Live site, was that we were seeking a small-scale land use amendment and a rezoning on a piece of property less than an acre. We gave a timeline of how this process would move forward, and what we didn't know at the time was that we would have a unanimous approval from the Gainesville Housing Authority to be our partner in perpetuity moving forward, and that happened on Tuesday. So that was a bit of exciting news in the process. We told no one that day, because no one attended the neighborhood workshop, that we would be filing a development plan. And we informed them that it generally takes about 6 to 7, 8 months in the city of Gainesville. But on the heels of coming through the plan board and the city commission, being that this was a PUD-PD, we would be submitting a development plan for the property. So what does this look like? Well, in this context area here, you can see this tinted color here is the University of Florida's main campus. There's the Standard in the northwest quadrant of the 13th Street and University intersection, the Holiday Inn, the Publix. We're here east of the old Leonardo's by the Slice and the Bistro, and we take the eastern half of the northern half of the block. To zoom in on it a little more closely, you can see the former bookstore here. This is the area used to be a baseball card shop, and then this was Mellow Mushroom for a while, and then Felipe's Tacos, and now today it all looks pretty vacant. We will be leaving the alley in place, and we've already been in contact with and gone to the University of Florida to work with their Architectural Review and Design Committee on our building, because we wanted to have a complementary form, knowing that the university owns the property to the west of us, the gas station, and then to the south. So we're working on some future things that we'll be back to talk to you, probably with Linda Dixon by our side or one of the university representatives. Access to our garage will be from the alleyway that comes off of South 12th. And you can see that in the upper right-hand picture. There are residential units to the south of that, garage-type apartments that are 2-story. And you can see the corner, and I have a much better picture of the corner here at 12th and University, just to show you the condition of what it looks like today. So that's the property there, 0.94 acres. The property today has urban mixed-use, high-intensity land use, and we are seeking a planned use district to actually take and lock this workforce housing component in and to work on a couple design issues. I'm also pleased to report that we don't need any waivers or variances in this, and we are coming forward really just to custom design this building and the format in which the density works for the building, and it will help promote the program. The area has urban transect zoning here, and we are seeking the PD to be placed on top of that. So as a little bit of background, as Andrew stated, the workforce housing rate that we are looking at here will, through our partnership with the Housing Authority, allow us to reach down and provide 2-bedroom units mixed throughout the building, not just in one section or one tower. All throughout the building we'll have units, and through our relationship we will be able to place individuals that are within 50 to 80% of the Gainesville area median income in this project. So it is a tremendous discount rate for 15 families, 15 couples, 15 pairs of friends that qualify. A great, great opportunity here. So this is what it looks like today. You know that if you go out there today, the sidewalk conditions are extremely varied. There's trash cans, bike racks, newspaper distribution boxes, and buildings that are largely covered up that say for lease and have screening over the front windows, and you can't really get a good sense of the space. A great reason to do this is the idea that workforce housing and what it will do for our community. We will increase the ability to retain and attract essential workforce folks that can live right across from campus, within blocks of UF Health, and in the central core where there are a lot of jobs. So by doing that, we are also encouraging pedestrian and bicycle travel. For many folks, think if you were going to school at the Warrington College of Business, or if you worked there as an administrator, your longest ride may be in the elevator from the 10th floor to the ground. You walk across the block and you go to work at the University of Florida. This will also facilitate the use of public transit, because we find in our projects that have structured garages and structured parking elements that people generally leave the keys on the peg and they use transit because they have the amenities around here. And the key to creating a more vibrant space is actually bringing more residents to that core. We think that this will also reduce the strain on the transportation system and public utilities because people won't be out driving around as much. As we densify our core, which is something that we really strongly believe in as a team and as individuals, this actually bolsters the viability and the resilience of Gainesville's economy in the center of town here. So we have a rather simple plan development layout plan because it's a very simple piece of property. It's the north portion of a block and it's the eastern portion of a block. So our area and our PD master plan really has two areas in it. The A area where the building will exist here in the center of the screen. There's what else. And then the B, which is the pedestrian realm. We have about 35,000 square feet of buildable area out of the 0.94 acres and about 6,500 feet of pedestrian realm along University Avenue, and then it turns the corner and goes down 12th Street. We are seeking 10 stories, just a little bit above what the existing zoning would do, but we are within the height limit of the existing zoning. And it was a conversation that we had with Andrew last week. We're not seeking to go any higher than the zoning, we're just seeking additional floors in there. We are within 4 stories of the historic district, so you can see on this map, there's a little arrow here in the southwest corner of the property, and it cuts like a semicircle arc through that southwest corner, so we're actually chamfering the building and bringing it down to 4 stories in the southeast corner, or the lower right corner of the building. We are seeking a maximum of 151 dwelling units. Out of that, 10% will be workforce and affordable housing, so there will be 15 units, and that equates to 30 beds. The maximum non-residential is a tremendous decrease from what's out there, non-residential that is, of only 6,500 square feet. Today, pretty much the entirety could be non-residential, and we will have 90 automobile parking spaces in there and several hundred bicycle and moped spaces in there. Because again, the trips and the destinations, you know, when the origin and destination are so close, people aren't going to take their car out to go try to find a place to park. They're going to walk it, scooter it, cycle it, you know, skate it. So great location. Our proposed PUD conditions, and we've done something a little different on this, knowing how busy city staff has been through the pandemic and how much construction is going on, we actually supplied draft conditions for both the planned use district and the planned development to staff and worked very collaboratively back and forth with staff, and we actually helped provide draft ordinances too to the attorney's office upstairs to help get this into the marketplace quicker. Our goal is to deliver this housing and this type of a pilot project as a real catalyst in the Gainesville community. All the units will be constructed equitably, as I stated. I'll say it again. All the same countertops, all the same appliances, all the same security and surveillance monitoring systems, everything that if you pay market rate, that will be available to you if you are there as a workforce housing tenant. Equitable access to these amenities, and then the subsidy vouchers will be provided by qualified tenants vetted through the Gainesville Housing Authority, and our relationship will exist in perpetuity. And it is codified into the PUD-PD elements, which makes this a very unique type project. This is the first time that we have ever had a voluntary inclusion of workforce housing in a proposed PUD and PD. And so the great word that Ms. Boyce said, this is really a proof of concept. If we can do it, we hope others can. And with this land use and zoning application in our Gainesville community, we hope we're going to change the trend and really kind of create a different housing mix in our community. Our conditions also include multiple types of residential and non-residential uses, similar to the transect zones, but we did keep the same urban form, so the building placement standards of how far we are from back of curb and the urban realm standards remain the same as in the transect zones. We're not seeking to vary that, so that when those around us develop, we'll have continuity with the context area. We are prohibiting any surface parking on this, and all parking will be internal to the building, so we won't be cluttering up the streetscape effectively with vehicles, and we're going to have all the same bicycle and scooter parking as the transect standards have. So this is a nice chart that really shows you the differences between straight zoning and what we're proposing here with the PUD-PD. The PUD-PD proposes 90 spaces minimum on the actual site. The required Transect zone has 0 requirement. We're going to require 90 in our property in structured parking. By the existing land use and zoning, 6 stories by right, 8 stories with performance bonuses. We're asking for 10 stories, but we're not asking for a change in what is allowed in height. So this is the same height that the transect zone natively allows. The density would be 100 to 125 units under the transect zoning. This is where we're asking for a little bit more. We're asking to go from 125, which would be the max allowed, to 151. That little bit increase from 125 to 151 allows us to help pay the freight, quite frankly. So that little jump gives us 33 more dwelling units on 0.94 acres, and half of those units are going to be marketed for the workforce housing. Our bed count, as staff stated, is generally 2.75 by the university context area. We are looking for a little difference there. Our difference will put us at 3.3 as opposed to 2.75. Again, some of the market rate pays the freight for the workforce housing in this scenario, and it's not a tremendous jump. It's going from 2.75 to like 3.3. The intensity, this is a real big difference here. Today, you'd be able to put about 37,000 square feet of non-residential uses on the property. We're dropping that down to 6,500. We're putting a cap there because we don't want to compete with a lot of the surrounding businesses that are striving to survive there. And we don't want to open 5 new restaurants in the base of this building. We want to have one coffee shop that we can get up and have running. And then in the future, if that transitions to something else, fine. But we're not in to create competition with the existing businesses that are up and down the 13th Street or University Avenue corridor. The major difference is there's no requirement today for any sort of affordable housing or workforce housing. And so we are looking for you to bless the 10% and state that, consistent with our MOU with the Housing Authority, that this will have 10% forever. And then lastly, there's no requirement for added housing opportunities. And under the PUD, PD, and under your discretion here, and in our discussion with our local agencies here, we're really happy to say that they are going to be our partner forever in this. So, this is one of my favorite. You know how I like pictures. This is what it looks like today if you're on the corner of 12th Street, which is a shared bicycle pedestrian street, except some people have paved speed bumps over the Sharrow markings. So if you're out there today, the kind of things that you see are signal control cabinets, water meters and valves that are all around here, electric risers. You've got the pedestrian actuator. You've got fire hydrants and mast arms. That's the pedestrian realm today at 6:30 on Thursday afternoon. And if you're a pedestrian, this is why we have problems in Gainesville. You've got that little place to stand when you push the button, and there's no wonder that things happen that are unfortunate in our community. We are going to totally change this realm, which effectively builds a wall to the pedestrian realm. If you want to sit inside around the cactus at a picnic table, that's what that did. What we're going to do is take this away and come back with a building that has a tremendous amount of pedestrian space at the ground plane, that has a chamfered in, or like a Mies van der Rohe corner on it, that allows then the exact things that the transect zones are looking for. A curb with a landscape zone in it, then the building frontage zone. And you can see that we have plenty of room on the corner where now we have actual ability for people to walk up and down the streets and not be tied up against either utility poles or garbage cans or newspaper cans. This is the corner of 12th and University. There's the old bookstore, then the bike shop, and now it's all covered with screen wraps for advertising for leasing offices. We're going to take that component of University Avenue away and restore it with this type of University Avenue, where there's a generous sidewalk that's activated pedestrian space, that's well lit with lots of glazing, landscaping areas in it, so that we can be much safer moving up and down the corridor 1 block away from campus. So staff has reviewed this. We've had a great time with this one because when we started this project, it was exciting. We knew where we wanted to go, and we just kept our fingers crossed up until Thursday today. Tuesday afternoon when we got our unanimous approval for the Housing Authority to work with us in perpetuity. This is the first time we've ever done something like this, and we think this will be a game changer. The proposed motions we hope that you will follow tonight are accepting your staff's recommendation. We have no comments or no differences in all the conditions. We're on 100% the same page with staff. So after a few words from our partner in this, I wanted to introduce Malcolm Kiner so he can talk about his experience working with us and hopefully a changing pattern here.
Thank you, Jerry, for that earlier introduction. Again, I can't say it any better than Jerry and Andrew. This has been an honor to work with the city, to work with our partners at Lincoln, and we feel that, as he said, this could be a game changer, specifically for our program participants, to qualify those individuals at that 50 to 80% of AMI and to give them an opportunity to live in something that you just saw, a luxury apartment complex, a block from the University of Florida, where many of them work, with the access to the amenities of grocery stores and restaurants and foods. It would just be a game changer for us. And we are also hopeful that with this success, that other for-profit developers will also think about doing inclusionary zoning. But again, for it to be voluntary, we're just excited about it. Again, as Jerry said, our board met on Tuesday night. They approved our MOU, our partnership with Lincoln unanimously. Again, we're excited as the city of Gainesville's affordable housing provider. We're working on projects constantly to increase the amount of affordable units that we have in the market. And the last thing I'll state is, again, we all know that there's a need for affordable housing. On our public housing waiting list, we have close to 3,000 people waiting. For our voucher program, we have close to 2,000. And even for the newest property that we opened last year at the Grove, we have close to 600 families and individuals waiting. So again, 15 may not be a lot, but it can make a difference in those individuals' lives. So we're thankful that you consider their application.
So with that, I'd like to close. The person that has actually made this, oops, I got the chin shot there. Scott was going to reframe on me. The person that really has made all this really possible, though, is our client, Chris Johnson. As you remember, we were here, I'm going to say about 2 years ago with the 900 block of West University Avenue, the old BP gas station and the Wing Zone and Gator Nails and a few other things. And right after we completed the entitlements, Chris said, I'm sorry to tell you I'm leaving the firm and I'm going to do something else. And I'm like, oh, we enjoyed working with you so much. And he's like, I'll find another project. And lo and behold, within a few months, he's like, I got another project in Gainesville and I want to do something different this time. And so we're really intrigued by that. And working with Chris Johnson and Francisco Rios, his business partner, they have done an incredibly deep dive at the rates and rental properties around town. And you cannot find anything that's at a comparable rate unless you go west of I-75 behind Home Depot. That's a game changer. They must have said, hey, I'm looking at an apartment and you know, found out all the pricings, but they created this heat map of Gainesville's rental rates, and they were able to deliver units that would cost the same amount as if you were out on Tower Road, but they put these units right on 13th and University. So thank you for your attention tonight. Sorry this is not as crisp and clean as the good old days, but we'll get a plug back here sooner or later. If you have any questions, myself, Ms. Boyce, Malcolm, and Ryan are here. And I know that Chris is on the line from Chicago, and Francisco is on the line from Austin, Texas. So they're also here. Oh, okay. And in the Zoom, Pam Davis, the CEO of the Housing Authority, is also on here too. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant from the board? Mr. Newman?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about, you're gonna have just one commercial space in the building, and it's going to be a coffee shop?
I can, yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. The first plate floor of the building will be built to commercial type standards. So we can have leasing down there, we could have concierge, but we'll have a coffee shop. And actually, Lincoln Ventures is in partnership with a coffee brewer, roaster, and retailer. They will run that initially. okay? And we only have 6,500 square feet on that ground plane. If things go really well, which we anticipate they will, and they need to or want to, reduce some of that space, we could put another retail space down there in the future. But initially, from day one, it will be turned on and activated when the building is open for tenancy. That way, we're not putting empty, retail spaces on University Avenue. They're doing that because of the importance of having the active street front and making sure that that's up and running. And also not to throw other businesses in there with vacant lease space and try to compete with all the rest of the rental rates that are out there on the retail corridor. So yeah, that's part of their business program, and they can pull that back later if they get like a better offer for like Dragonfly West or, Embers East across from Tiger Hall, something like that.
Right, but basically it's gonna be sort of built out to have one commercial space at this point in time, but you're saying it could be more in the future?
Yes, Madam Chair, it will be built out to have one commercial retail space in it, but given the building heights and the floor plate heights and the way it's constructed, it could have more in the future. It's not our intent, though. It's only allowing 6,500 square feet, so that doesn't get you very far. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Hurst?
On that same vein, I love that you guys are not adding any more vacant space, because I live and work in that area all day, and it's an eyesore. And quite frankly, what has happened over time is that these developers have come in here and they have gobbled up all of the retail space from some small businesses in that area, repackaged it and put it back out in the market, and now the small business, because of the pricing, cannot operate in that area. So I love what you guys are doing, that you're creating opportunities, but I would ask that if you guys do consider somebody else, and if the coffee roaster does not work out, that somebody else has a shot to be in that area too, because there are some very good operators that have just been priced out the market. So
Yeah.
that would be important. And then secondly, when it comes to the parking, I don't know if this is a conversation you guys have had yet, but how are you going to mitigate the parking? Because I can imagine families being in that area and living in that area around the students, and nightlife is what it is around campus. Stopping those individuals from parking there to go to the night spots, to go to the restaurants late at night. So I don't know if you guys have had any conversations, but I'd be interested to hear what the plans are for mitigating parking to just the residents if possible.
Well, Madam Chair, we will work as the leasers or the leasors of the site to have parking on a limited basis. So a resident or a business operator or an employee would have the ability to park there. We envision, and the way that it'll be marketed is that a lot of the tenants will be coming there with bicycles and mopeds and that nature. A certain amount will be held out, and I believe that the way we've got it structured with the decks of parking, and it's in the back kind of under the building, and the building is built up like a pedestal except for the University Avenue frontage, which is all live storefront. We'll control it through that mechanism, and I'm sure the attraction factor will be you don't need to have a car to live this close to campus. You don't need to have a car to live and work right across the street from your employer. So we'll do that internally through leasing and management.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
This has gotten a little sticky from all the wiping down. It's like planner flypaper right here.
Okay, are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item, or anyone else from the team? I think Jerry covered it pretty well. Okay, is there anyone on the phone lines?
Madam Chair, there's no one on the lines at this time. Floor
Okay.
is yours.
Okay, bringing it back to the board then for comment or motion. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to express appreciation to staff for pushing for the inclusionary zoning policies, and also to Mr. Kiner and Ms. Davis, if she's still on the phone, for working with the applicant, and then of course also to the applicant for reserving units for tenants at an affordable rate, and for working so closely with the Housing Authority on that outcome. I'm up on the plan amendment when we get to the point of a motion.
Okay. Mr. Newman?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder if we can be a little bit greedy and not, hopefully not in an unreasonable way. So, sort of getting to this concern that we have of essentially, sort of driving out small local businesses, understanding that, that Lincoln, has someone that they want to sort of put in and sort of get things going. Is there potentially a condition that we might want to put in about that, after, if Lincoln decides to no longer run that roaster or the next sort of tenant, whether we'd want to maybe put some requirement that would need to be essentially a non-conventional chain business, something along those lines? Would there be any interest in that?
I don't know that we can do that. Mr. Persons?
Well, Madam Chair, this is a planned development zoning, so really kind of there's a fair amount of possibility. I would really kind of pose that question to the applicant, because I think there can be a condition, but I would suggest that you would want to make sure that the applicant is comfortable with that.
Mr. Diedenbach, I don't know if you want to respond to that idea.
So, Madam Chair, Mr. Diedenbach is looking at his phone to see what his client is texting him from Chicago and Austin, Texas.
Or if your client wants to, speak up on the Zoom, I think we can do that as well.
Good evening. This is Chris Johnson. Can I be heard
yeah,
here?
Chris, we can't see all of the speaker bubbles, but you're up there now.
No worry, nothing flattering to look at here. I would like to say that I think, restricting the that the retail would maybe not be in the best interest in maintaining the retail, but I would say that we at Lincoln Ventures don't have any national contracts. We are not looking to bring in a national chain of any sort. But what we would entertain is, obviously any vacant area, we're looking to bring in anyone that would fill that spot. So having the restriction on it, I think, comes with its own risk of, potentially if there isn't a local vendor or someone there, that it could remain vacant, and that's not something we would like to see, obviously. But at this time, nor in the future, do we have any sort of plan to bring in a national vendor.
Thank you. Let me see. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is an important issue, and Member Newman's brought it up several times, and I don't know the answer to it. I know a lot of local governments have ordinances that they call formula retail ordinances, where in certain areas of a community, they say we don't want formula retail businesses. That doesn't guarantee that it's local, but it means, if you've got a model that's a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Best Buy, that's the same everywhere in the country, in this zoning district, that's not something that we want in the community. And you can do this. This is legal, doesn't violate any constitutional principles if it's done correctly. I am less comfortable with the idea of attaching it to a project when we don't have policies in the code. That may be surprising because all the time I'm like, hey, we should change this application. But I usually only say that when I think we have really strong code language that everybody's been able to have access to since the very beginning when they designed their project, and we just haven't met it yet. And in this instance, I don't think that we have that. I watched the recording of the today. Actually, watched the recording of the meeting that I missed where we met with the consultant, and you made comments in this vein at that meeting too. What I think that we should do is add this to our referral list and poke staff again to, we got the sidewalks this week, so we are making progress on our referral list, but to continue speeding that up so we're getting at least one item a week off that referral list and have this be on there. And the benefit of that is the city commission looks at our referral list too, if they have its initial blessing at the outset as a general principle, then staff will know they can invest time in actually creating something that would apply, on a broader basis than just saying applicant by applicant, you have to do this. Those are my thoughts. I do think it's super important, but I don't know how we attach it to a specific proposal.
Mr. Newman?
I agree. I concur. So I do think it's something that I keep bringing up, and I know Mr. Degenbach's a long-term Gainesville person and knows some of the interesting things that we've had and we're kind of losing, and there's other benefits that are sort of occurring. But I just think it's really important, particularly in that part of town, that we try to get some of the unique smaller businesses there, or try to give it the best chance. And I think that this project moving forward is doing a lot of things, and I appreciate what's going on. But and again, I encourage Lincoln appears to be a very sort of progressive, forward-thinking group, but as much as can be done to try to incentivize small local businesses to either use that space at some time in the future, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, or do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move approval of petition petition PB 21-55 LUC.
Okay, do we have a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. Ms. McMullen, can you read the next item into the record for us, please?
Yes. Next item under new business, petition PB-21-57 ZON Lincoln Ventures LLC agent rezone property from City of Gainesville Urban 9 U9 to City of Gainesville Plan Development PB, generally located at the southwest corner of West University Avenue and Southwest 12th Street, related to PB 2155 LUC. I do have the staff presentation that I'm pulling up. Oh, it's the wrong one. Hold on. All right, so we've sort of gone over a lot of the details here in the applicant's presentation, but I'll just I'll kind of go over the main points again from a staff perspective. So this petition requests to rezone the property from City of Gainesville Urban 9 to City of Gainesville Plan Development, again for the property located at the southwest corner of West University Avenue and Southwest 12th Street. So the existing zoning at the property is U9, which, as we discussed, allows for 100 dwelling units per acre by right, 125 by special use permit. This is the proposed PD layout plan that the applicant's representative had shown us in the previous presentation. So it shows the proposed setbacks, the historic district overlay buffer, the proposed vehicular connection off the alley to the rear, and the development standards on this sheet also call out the minimum number of parking spaces as 90, which, as was previously stated, is an increase as the existing zoning district does not require vehicular parking. And the area labeled A there is where the development will occur. The area labeled B indicates the public realm. So this is a rendering, the rendering that we saw with the applicant's presentation previously. So the building is proposed to be 10 stories in height for that portion adjacent to University Avenue, and then that portion you can see at the rear there off of 12th is the portion that's within the 100-foot buffer of the historic district. So that area will be limited to 4 stories in height. So the proposed PD conditions outline the types of things that would normally be outlined in the zoning district. So Condition 1 outlines the allowable uses within the PD. All of these uses are allowed within the U9 district. The second condition also outlines the minimum number of bedrooms, 10% of which are bedrooms and dwelling units, 10% of which shall be affordable housing units. Then again, the maximum 6,500 square feet of commercial space. And then there are some conditions about the design of the building, which basically mirror the transect zoning requirements in the code. Also a condition that the development would need to meet the requirements of the TMPA Area A. And then more specifics about the layout of the site, the setbacks, the landscaping, the sidewalks. All parking must be internal to the site. 90 parking spaces as we discussed, maximum building height, and just more conditions about the operation of the site. And then finally, conditions related to the building design, namely the last condition, which is that development shall be consistent with the PB layout plan and elevation drawing submitted as part of this application. So staff does find that the petition meets review criteria for rezonings in general, the criteria found in section 30-3.14. And the code also asks us to look at section 30-3.17 at the plan development review criteria. And staff does find that those review criteria are met with this petition and recommends approval of the request. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff on this item? Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. McMullen, which is the condition that relates to the elevations? That was the only question I had about the application, was wanting to be sure that we got those great elevations built.
Yes, so that was. Yes, condition 16.
Okay, I didn't have the revision. Perfect.
Okay, yes, sorry, I did revise that, and not sure if it made it into the version that you had downloaded, but yes, it's in there.
I love it. And those are the dwell drawings attached?
Yes, so it would be, I'm not sharing my screen. Yes, it would be the attached drawings that were submitted with the application.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Ackerman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious about condition 10, and I'm mostly interested why we have a minimum number of parking spaces required in a district that really has no parking requirements. And my main curiosity has to do with, I know I've talked to some of the people at the Standard, and they indicate that their parking garage is somewhat overbuilt. They got way more space than they have people who want to park there. I'm just wondering if they end up with, a huge demand for scooters or bike, are they gonna have to come back and change the minimum number of parking spaces? I don't even know why we have a minimum number of parking spaces, to be honest.
So that condition was proposed by the applicant. So they may be able to.
Maybe Mr. Diedenbach can answer that question.
Madam Chair, the reason that we have self-imposed a minimum number in there is because we don't want to have the actual or the impression that we're going to build this and everyone's going to park throughout the neighborhood. So we wanted to, and it was a job, quite frankly, for Dwell Design to get close to 100 spaces into effectively that half block. You think how small that area is. I keep going over the number, 0.94 acres, but if you've ever walked that area, we're getting basically 90 cars on 3 levels of parking underneath the building on an alley. We did that so that there would be enough room in there for, somebody wants to come there and obviously work, or somebody's running the coffee shop, or there's somebody who's just going to have a car. We didn't want to have that appearance or reality of they're out parking in the neighborhood somewhere. If you wanted to be creative and say that the applicant could convert spaces, but we're not going to shrink the building and we're not going to expand the building, because we've got it dialed in all the areas like where you know, you've got parking at like a 90-degree angle. The corner nooks are where bicycles and moped fit. So we've really, you know, shoehorned everything in there to try to give as much parking as possible.
I mean, if you're comfortable with the number and that it's required as really more as a marketing issue,
Yeah.
I'm fine.
If you were comfortable and said that we could, you know, restripe the number as long as we didn't change the envelope, that would be fine. So we're not back asking, say, hey, can we?
If you don't mind coming back and asking, I certainly don't.
We always like seeing you.
So actually, Mr. Diedenbach, I have something that you may be the best to answer as well. So we're committing you to these elevations. I'm not sure as far as utilities go, like I don't see on these, and you just may not be showing us, if you have sort of an electrical nook cut out like we've seen on a lot of these buildings, how you plan to handle the electrical. We just, you know, we saw your example of the street corner, and I know you're not getting rid of the mast arm or the signal box, so don't pretend that those are going anywhere.
Well,
DOT won't let you, but
so,
the electrical and the things that you can control, like the backflow preventer, where are those going? Because I don't see nooks on here.
Yeah. That's a great question. So thank you for asking that one. And I do have an analogy, and when Patrice and Chris and I were all talking, and you know, we do a dry run. We have a rehearsal for these, right? And so the question was like, well, what are you doing for utilities, Mr. Diedenbach? And I kind of equated it to closing your eyes and unraveling spaghetti. So I'm turning it over to Travis Hasty at the office.
Okay.
And to answer your question more directly, during the GRU project meeting, it's a bit of spaghetti back there. You know, because you all did the building on the block immediately to the east. We have both 110, 220, and 480, and the poles back there, and a lot of it is elevated. And our next door neighbor to the west ultimately has redevelopment plans there. So what we're doing right now is we're kind of unspooling things for 100 years worth of electricity and water and sewer. We are going to try to clean that up, and I've been in initial conversations with Melissa McCready in transportation and mobility on how to restore the Sharrow and how to redo that pedestrian realm in there. We want to try to get as much of that valve work and like the electrical risers out of there. That cabinet might stay there, but we're going to try to clear the rest out. We're moving most, and I guess the most direct answer to your question is, most of the connection points are going to move off of the corner, and they're going to move to mid-block, closer toward UF. Because as the utilities go in, they kind of feed down the alley, and then they spider out to the residents and the businesses there from behind. So Travis is in the process right now of going through kind of layer by layer and saying, okay, well this, 120 volt has to stay here, the 240 is going to go here, the 3-phase is going to go here. We're going to try to feed it all from the back, and the nook in the building is really at the western edge, kind of central to the block, so that we're not eating up the pedestrian realm on the eastern edge where we are by 12th. But it's, I think maybe that was a rhetorical question, so you could share the headaches that you have when you do this too.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot about that area.
Yeah.
And the project across the street, and electrical is a big challenge. I mean,
so
that section near the hub has all been undergrounded.
Right.
And we had electrical issues even during construction. Things had to change.
Yeah.
So electrical is an issue, and so I was hoping you would have a notch, and we did one in that building.
Yeah.
Water for that building is all coming off of 12th.
Right.
So I didn't know if you were planning to do the same thing on the opposite side of 12th, across from that meter room. You'd sort of have a mirror meter room. But that changes what you can do in front of, where you're bringing the water and the sewer in.
Right.
And then thinking through where you have this notch, because like I said, it's not shown on these elevations, and so I don't want to link you to elevations that don't allow you to tuck utilities inside.
Yeah.
So I don't want that to be a reason why you have to come back to the plan board, because I'd love for you to get as much of it hidden as possible. As and I know you'll try to do as much as possible.
Oh, and absolutely.
As long as you don't have a problem with these elevations, and you feel like you're far enough along on the utilities.
Yeah, and that's partially the reason why we didn't seek, to modify the alley, because everything in the world is in that alley, and it feeds all the surrounding proximate parcels. And our neighbor has a redevelopment plan too, which is going to take a lot of electricity, because it's going to be, more than a gas station, So, yeah, we appreciate you offering that question, and I think we're fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hide as many as you can.
And keep them out of the pedestrian realm.
Okay, Mr. Persons.
You know I can't resist a good utility pad-mounted equipment
know.
discussion.
We
I-
we all love them.
Yeah, I do think, you know, even though this is somewhat of an inside baseball conversation, like, I do think it just highlights the challenges that I think that we're all facing, both in terms of the designers as well as city staff, and really having, you know, delivering projects that have a really high quality pedestrian realm, while still being able to make sure utilities are serving the building. There are things that we're trying to do on the sort of backside, as I think you and Mr. Dienbach are aware of, in terms of bringing some of the standards, you know, the utility standards, more in line with actual building construction. So things like lowering the nook height, you know, to correspond to the second floor, as opposed to eating into a third floor of leasable space. Some of those types of changes that are really kind of get at trying to balance those things. It wasn't that long ago, Madam Chair, where we had buildings designed with transformers in the buildings, and a lot of other places in this country are still doing that. But that's where we are, and I think it just, you know, being able to, I'm glad that you brought this up and highlighted it, because it does have a real measurable impact in building design, in the pedestrian realm, and it highlights how important it is for folks of the city, including my staff, to really pay attention to the details and to make sure that if something doesn't look right, or we're losing that balance in one side or the other, that we're able to step in and call foul and try to bring everybody to the table. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on this? I don't remember. Did we do public comment yet on the zoning? I don't think so. Okay.
No, ma'am, nobody on the
We haven't done
lines if you're
applicant
asking.
Either. Okay, sorry. I'm getting it all mixed up. We kind of jumped ahead here. Mr. Diedenbach, do you have more to add for the zoning petition?
Madam Chair, based on the competent and substantial evidence placed into the record during the portion of the land use component and all the additional testimony that was offered by myself and Mr. Kiner and Mr. Johnson over the telephone, we'll rest on what we had earlier. We'll get you home earlier.
Great, thank you. We appreciate that. Mr. Hawkins.
I move approval of petition PB-21-57ZON, including the condition 16, so with a full set of staff conditions.
Okay.
We all,
Second by
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ackerman.
we wanted to put the memorandum of understanding. We submitted that to staff. I don't know, Andrew, how if you wanted to handle that into the motion.
That was in the backup.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to amend it or staff feels like that's,
I think that was a condition in the land use.
I believe it was, yeah.
okay.
Just so the MOU is permanently recorded with the land use and zoning.
Okay, I know it was in the backup for both items, it was
Right.
linked, so, but as long as there's a condition tying it, staff, do you feel confident?
Yeah.
Or do you want that in the motion?
You can put it in
Put it in the motion.
Okay,
I'd like to modify my motion to include, let's modify that condition 16 to attach the MOU with the Housing Authority to the PD report.
great, thank you. And Mr. Ackerman, are you
I
okay with
second
that
that
amendment? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you all. It's a very neat project. We're excited to see that move forward, and hopefully other people will pick up this idea as well. Okay, Ms. McMullen, would you mind reading the next item into the record for us?
Yes, next item is PB-21-31 ZON CHW Agent for the Salvation Army, rezone property from City of Gainesville Limited Industrial I-1 to City of Gainesville Warehouse W, located at 55 Northwest 23rd Avenue. And I am pulling up the staff presentation. Thank you. All right.
Is it my imagination, or is it just Andrew and Miss McMullen are the only two people left in the office? We seem to be working her pretty hard.
Yeah. We're hardworking planners.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, so petition PB 2131. This is a request to rezone property from City of Gainesville Limited Industrial to City of Gainesville Warehouse. The property is located at 55 Northwest 23rd Avenue. It's approximately 4.1 acres in size. The existing zoning, as you can see on the map there, is I-1. Surrounding zoning districts include I-1, I-2, BA, and warehouse. This is a closer look aerial view of the property. The existing Salvation Army retail establishment is this building you see here at the northern portion of the site, and there's some existing storage at the rear of the property. So to sort of give you an idea of the context of the area and the nature of surrounding properties, single-story commercial buildings abut the property to the east and west. Property to the south is actually city-owned property, and yeah. So the proposal here at this property is to construct a church and a multi-purpose center with storage. So the current zoning district, I-1, does not allow for this use, but the warehouse district does. So staff has reviewed the petition in accordance with the review criteria. Properties directly to the east are zoned warehouse, and this zoning district is compatible with the surrounding other zoning districts. The industrial zoning district really isn't appropriate for this property since it doesn't contain an industrial use, and there are no plans for the property to be used for an industrial use in the future. And approving warehouse zoning here will allow for the proposed use and will maintain a zoning district which is compatible with the immediate area. And I believe the applicant is here as well, but with that, staff recommends approval of the request.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff before we go to the applicant? Not seeing any. Welcome, Mr. Thompson.
Good evening. Ryan Thompson with CHW. Mr. Seth Wood is on Zoom and has control of the PowerPoint. If he could share his screen. Perfect. That was surprisingly fast.
Unusual, right? We're all used to
yes.
it taking a while. How do I
don't know
share
how
my
worried
screen?
I've been for the last hour and a half. Thank you for allowing me to be in front of you this evening. The Salvation Army is looking to construct a church with storage and multi-purpose room on the rear of their property. They want to continue to operate the retail up front and better utilize their property. So with that, I'll go through a very brief presentation, but that really is the gist of why we're here this evening. Seth, if you would proceed to the next slide. We've conducted a neighborhood workshop, publishing both in the Gainesville Sun as well as advertising to adjacent property owners, and nobody attended the workshop. The request is from I-1 to warehouse and wholesaling, which is consistent with the underlying future land use. And again, to reiterate, the intent is to develop on the backside of the property a church with multi-purpose room and storage while maintaining the operation, the retail operation up front. Next slide. There are several benefits to this. You are able to better utilize the property. It's an infill project, even though they're currently already operating on the property. The synergy and mix of uses by being able to fulfill their mission of both worship and spreading the word of Jesus Christ, as well as helping those that are less fortunate, all in one site, is really an asset, I feel, to the community. And next slide, please. Just a little bit on the background of the Salvation Army, if you're not familiar. They've founded in England in 1865, served in 130 countries, and 23 million Americans assisted annually. Their mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, as I mentioned, and to meet human needs in his name without discrimination. Thank you. Next slide, please. This is the timeline that we've held to, conducting the first step meeting in January, and then followed by the neighborhood workshop. We've followed the city's application process, and obviously before you this evening, and look forward to a favorable recommendation. Next slide, please. A little context of the property. It does front 23rd Avenue. It's just west of Main Street. And then you can see some of the adjacent uses highlighted in blue. Immediately north is the Cabot Coppers site. Next slide, please. A little closer to the site, there's office and retail along 23rd Avenue to the west. That's to the left on this map. And then on the right or east is the CSX Railroad. Immediately south is a property owned by the city of Gainesville. There's also, I think, a window company or something just south of the retail office on 23rd Avenue. There's about 16 to 17,000 square feet of retail on the site currently, and then that small building in the very back would be replaced with a larger building for the church and storage. Next slide, please. A little bit more visual of the actual property here. Next slide. Industrial future land use currently with the I-1 zoning, and again, warehousing and wholesaling is our request. And next slide, please. Retail sales is permitted in both zoning districts, but the place of religious assembly is not. With this, both uses would be permitted on site. And okay, one more slide. Staff's recommendation is for approval, and then our recommendations for motions, if you would.
Thank you. Mr. Ackerman, question for the applicant.
I'm sorry, I just have a random question. Do you know if the construction of this church behind the current property is going to replace the church on East University, or the facility there?
That's been the most often first question I've had. Mr. Persons asked that. I'm not sure. I don't know if it will or not.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? We don't have anyone else in the room, so we'll check the phone lines.
Madam Chair, it's an especially light night tonight. We have nobody on the lines at this time.
Great, thank you. Bringing it back to the board for comment or for a motion.
I move that we approve petition PD-21-31 to rezone the property from limited industrial I-1 to Gainesville Warehouse.
Oh, we're going to give it to Mr. Hurst if that's okay. We've got some new names on the minutes. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. Thank you. Ms. McMullen, can you read us the next item into the record, please?
So the next item, this is actually an item that was continued from a prior meeting. It is petition PB-20-03 TCH, City of Gainesville applicant request to amend the City of Gainesville Land Development Code in order to introduce exemption provisions for sidewalk requirements pertaining to single-family residential properties. So at the January board meeting was the last time that you all discussed this. And I'm pulling up the presentation here. Juan Castillo is also on the line, but he is actually traveling right now, so I'm going to pull up the presentation for him, but he is available for questions as well.
Okay.
So I won't go through the entire presentation again, but basically the direction from the plan board in January was to explore the option of a fee in lieu of sidewalk construction, and to clarify the fee distribution procedure and eliminate the mile radius proposals. So the fee in lieu of option has been provided, the text for that has been provided to you in your backup. The fee would be calculated based on the market cost per square foot of construction. The current proposal would be to have the fee collected in coordination with TMPA districts, which would be used in a defined area and or near the paying development area. So the fee in lieu of option would be a last resort, and the applicant would have to demonstrate that they can't meet other sidewalk mitigation requirements, or that they're in a neighborhood already existing with no sidewalks. So this is the text that was provided for you in your backup. And I have the TMPA zone mapped here for your reference. And we also have, as I mentioned, Juan Castillo on the line. And we're here available for questions as well.
Great, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Ackerman?
I just have, I'm assuming the way the draft shows that this would be brought up when it says appropriate reviewing authority, it would be brought up either before the DRB or the plan board as part of a complete petition.
In this case, I think because we're really kind of talking about single-family home permits, it wouldn't have to go to a board. But the way that we've sort of set it up internally is it's the planning department, the Department of Mobility, Transportation Mobility, and the Public Works Department. And we jointly make a decision about these types of things as they exist today. And so that would be the reviewing authority. It would be city staff in this case.
Okay. Why don't we just say that?
Well, I would say the language as it's in the petition is not been city attorneyized yet. And I do want to say that Mr. Castillo is broadcasting from his grandmother's living room right now, probably up in New York. So.
At least he's not driving on I-75.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
We do get, the Historic Preservation Board does single-family homes sometimes. So it could be possible that they would, other than staff.
That's absolutely correct.
I was just hoping we didn't have to start doing sidewalk waivers.
Yeah, I trust staff to make this decision. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is staff, y'all are looking for guidance from us on whether we want to go with the fee in lieu language that talks about neighborhood and street, the fee in lieu language that doesn't, or the waiver, right? You want us to pick one of those three? Am I understanding that right?
I'm going to probably see if Juan can cover that one.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, good evening, City Plan Board members. Yes, sorry, I'm currently in New York visiting Grandma. It's her birthday tomorrow, so decided to come over here. Yeah. But to answer Mr. Hawkins' question, at the last City Plan Board, you directed us to focus on fee waiver specifically. There was concerns about the fee in lieu of and the complete waiver. So, excuse me. So let me backtrack a little bit. You asked us to focus on the fee in lieu of, not the complete fee waiver, but that's what's before you right now is a fee in lieu of. And then the other direction that you gave us at the last City Plan Board was to clarify the mile radius that seemed to be a bit cumbersome, and so you directed us to kind of clarify that, which we've what we have before you is basically a requirement or a situation where if there is a fee that's going to be presented in lieu of, that fee would be used, if applicable, in an area that's either adjacent or on the property or nearby the property that's paying the fee. And if we determine that that's not possible, then we're going to see if that fee can be applied within the neighborhood of the property that's paying the fee. And if that's not possible, then within the outskirts of that neighborhood. Ultimately, it will be used to further improve the network of existing sidewalks.
Mr. Castillo, the memo that we got suggested that you perceived there were problems with both of the fee and lieu options, and so you were recommending the waiver option. But based on what you just said, it sounds like I misunderstood the memo.
That may have been
So-
the memo from the last meeting.
Okay, there we go. Well, then that really moots all my questions. Then I definitely want to go fee and lieu. I prefer that. Don't care for the waiver. I do have one suggested modification to the language. I'm going to look directly at you, Mr. Persons, on this. We've talked before about what the word single-family residential mean, and you've always told me that it means property zone single-family residential, but now you just said it means a single-family house. So we'll have to talk about that later. We define, I think what we're talking about here when we say single-family residential is houses. We define the terms infill and single-family dwelling in the code. So if we're talking about a house, it's an infill house, it's not a subdivision, it's just you're redeveloping a lot in an existing neighborhood. The phrase I think we should use, because it matches our definitions, is single-family dwelling infill, or infill single-family dwelling. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I think that's a good clarification, and I think really just to add to that, where things get really kinky in our experience is when we get a building permit, and I probably hear staff all saying, yeah, when we get a building permit in for just a house, and it happens to be a transect zone, especially if it's a more urban transect zone, because generally in most of the transect zones, houses like single-family dwellings are permitted use. It's just sort of rare. We don't get them very often, but when we do get them, it's a huge headache because we have the sidewalk piece, but then we also have a bunch of other kind of standards that get applied to building frontage, and we've talked a little bit about that. I think in our building frontage text amendment, we discussed potentially giving an exemption for single-family dwellings in that case. So yes, dwelling, I totally agree. I think that's a good clarification. It'll help staff as we're actually applying this, do it in a more consistent basis. So.
Do we have anyone from mobility on the Zoom? I know Scott's out of town as well. Or maybe Juan can I have a question based on, we went from, I think, just talking about putting this into a fund, and we were talking about, well, is it citywide, is it per TMPA district, and the latest draft sort of has this idea of within the neighborhood or street, then the perimeter of the neighborhood, and then the sidewalk connections of neighborhoods with nearby activity centers. And I just wondered if that seems to me like it's going to create a headache for the mobility people sort of administering the program. I'm fine with this just going into the TMPA area and then sort of having a dueling, sidewalk fund for each TMPA zone. And when they have enough money in that fund for any particular project, they can just deploy it in that area. I just worry about this bogging things down, and any individual house isn't going to create enough funds, necessarily to do any of these projects, and it may be a long time in any particular neighborhood before you get, 10 infill houses with enough money to do any project. So I'm all for simplifying it to just going into the TMPA zones. Mr. Hawkins has his light on, so he may not agree with me, but I'm for simplifying that personally. I think it's going to be a headache for them. And so, Mr. Castillo, I don't know if you can speak about any of your conversations with Scott, or Allison, or anyone else in the mobility department about that. If you can respond first, and then, Mr. Hawkins may sort of have a follow-up.
Madam Chair, I can also speak to it.
Sure, yeah, if you were a part of those conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did, and Mr. Castillo may want to add his input. But we did meet with Mobility Public Works about this, and they are supportive of this language. We came up with the language together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not too concerned about them applying it. And I think the language reflects the input from the city attorney's office with respect to just, because like a fee in lieu of, particularly when it's a sidewalk, when it's something small, when we're talking about sort of mobility improvements where you're maybe like, doing a bike lane or doing something that, may have a larger sort of system-wide benefit around mobility. Sidewalks are so small that the attorney's office felt more comfortable with this language, where there's more flexibility than I think what we had come up with or talked about before, where it's like we're just sort of setting some sort of arbitrary distance, or we're going the other direction and we're just tying it to like a mobility, to like one of the TMPA zones. We wanted to create sort of a tiered approach in terms of just decision making from staff. So that's what that language reflects, is like where we're spending the money. And I think mobility staff was good with that. They felt like this gives them enough flexibility to make like, smart calls and where they can fill gaps with sidewalks.
I just worry they're gonna need like a GIS map of,
Right, we talked
$300
about some of
came from
those
this
things.
spot and $500 came from this
Right.
spot, and like, it
Right.
just, to me, it seems like it would be onerous to track, but if they're comfortable with it, then I'm okay with it. Mr. Hawkins?
I was just gonna say. We're not disagreeing with you. When I coincidentally have discussed this with Mr. Wright, and what he said was, the thing that makes the most sense to me is organizing it by TMPA zones. And in each TMPA zone, if you collect in that zone, it goes into a pool in that zone. And I like the idea of keeping in the neighborhood, certainly, but I see the practicality of what Mr. Wright's describing and what you described.
I see the benefit to being able to pool the money to do a project on like an entire street section that needs it, within that TMPA zone. I think there's benefit to that. I do see, Public Works probably being in the mix is like, oh, well, we can just go do these little sidewalk repairs that probably, arguably, the city should be paying for rather than this fund anyway. So I also think that there's the potential for like these small amounts of money to potentially be misused. If it's, we have $500 to spend, they're gonna go do things that Public Works budget should take care of anyway. I'd rather it be pooled into like, slightly more significant sidewalk projects along, longer stretches that really need the connections. But, I mean, that's my personal preference, is that we do it more by TMPA zone. I'll support this if staff is comfortable with it and if that's the pleasure of the board, but I would be open to an amendment to take it back to TMPA zone as well. So.
Can I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps as a fourth decision-making criteria, that we just add within the TMPA zone that it's collected, and so that's the sort of stopgap. If they can't meet, if we can't try to put it close to the neighborhood, then at the very end it just defaults to the TMPA zone. So I think that sort of gets it at the board's discussion.
Which?
Go ahead, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm still confused. We've got 3 undated text changes. Which one, if we vote to approve the staff recommendation with a modification like you're describing, which one of these 3 are we looking at?
The latest one, I think, is the one that has like the 1, 2, 3 options, like almost in a tiered way at the end of it. And it's not dated, so I can't tell you which one, but under F, it has, A, B, C, D, and then 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I think it's the only one that has the discussion of
Okay.
the 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's the last attachment.
Would my understanding of F1 is that the is that the money's going to be collected and it'll be associated with the TMPA zone. And then it's got this language about connecting the gaps in the neighborhoods or local street. If we wanted to accommodate what you're describing, Madam Chair, why don't we just change paragraph F1 to, after the word sidewalk segments within, strike the remainder of the sentence and say that TMPA zone. And with that, when I read this, I thought that was the change that made the most sense. When I was thinking maybe we would, when I was contemplating the direction you're describing.
I would support that. I would also be open, Mr. Persons thinks adding number 4 helps them. So this has been city attorneyized then? This has been?
Yeah, we met with the city attorney.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would say the problem is that we have large TMPA zones.
Mhm.
So, even though perhaps the risk of misspending the money is low, like, I think you could potentially create a situation where we collect money in a fee in lieu for a sidewalk in one corner of a TMPA zone, and then we end up spending it in the upper corner of that TMPA zone, and it's not really tied to where that collection, the property owner who we collected the fee from, it can't probably reasonably say that they're receiving any benefit from it. Is it like, will staff be fine with if you just tie it to the TMPA zone? Sure. But I think that's why we wanted to provide some decision-making criteria that when staff is actually applying this, we're trying to get at least as close to possible as where that money is being collected.
But we're left, if we don't do something like that, with having 50 funds of little dribs and drabs that never amount to enough to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think as long as it gets, like I said, from staff's suggestion, if you add that forth, then I think that still allows pooling of money. It still allows that money to be spent within the TMPA zone, but it still preserves some decision-making criteria from staff. We're not going to get it out of from an administrative standpoint. If we do a fee in lieu of for sidewalks, like, we're going to have to maintain those funding accounts. That it just is what it is from a financial accounting standpoint on the city side. So doing this is going to create a level of administration, like, regardless of whatever we decide tonight. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see, is there anyone on the phone lines? Are there any comments from the public? I think we're getting closer to a motion here.
Madam Chair, nobody on the lines right now. Floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Okay, bringing it back to the board for direction, hopefully a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move that the plan board approve petition PB-20-03 TCH, specifically referencing the language. The file name that I have that appears to be the one we're all describing is 2000728 PB-21903 TCH, and then language following. So approve the petition with that language. I'm just going to put in one modification, that we strike the phrase single-family residential and substitute single-family dwelling wherever it appears in the language.
Are you open to adding the number 4 as Mr. Person suggested?
I absolutely am. I just didn't honestly follow what he was suggesting specifically enough, and his last comment kind of seemed to be, but if he'll phrase it clearly, I'll add it to my motion.
So I think we wanted to add, as a 4th option, sort of as close to where the fees collected, and then branching out as a final option, for construction or improvement of sidewalk connections within the TMPA area that it was collected.
Okay, so I would add number 4 that the funds must be spent in the TMPA zone from which they were collected.
Second.
Okay, second from Mr. Newman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously.
Aren't we an agreeable group?
Gosh, we were an agreeable group tonight. Are there any member comments? I'm thinking maybe we should bring up the item from earlier, if someone wants to
I'll-
discuss that.
I would make a motion in two parts, and if I'm interested in Member Newman likes them. One, we add to our outstanding referral list for code amendments, consideration of regulations on formula businesses, which I know is pretty general, but I think that'll get staff started for presentation. And then two, that we have at our next meeting an update on where we are in our referral list. We just get a fresh update of that document.
Do we have any other pending presentations at the next meeting? Because I'm just curious, like comp plan, downtown master plan, city strategic, like, I'm just wondering if we have anything like that that maybe would take up time away from the update of the overall list?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think we were trying to get the city manager here for a presentation about the strategic plan, but it's already changing, so I think
Okay.
once that's finalized, he'll probably want to come.
Okay.
And then I think we'll probably, maybe in the mid-June, schedule another comprehensive plan update.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I don't think right now.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
good with that motion.
Then do we have a second? I just wanted to make sure we weren't like loading down an agenda.
I'm not gonna be here next month, so I think y'all should add lots of complicated.
Get it all
complicated items. Just be sure you vote the way that I would if I were here.
Yeah, thanks for putting things on our agenda for us when you're not here. Okay, so do we need to, we'll take a vote. We had, Mr. Hawkins made the, motion, Mr. Newman seconded. All those in favor? Please say aye. Aye. Okay, our next meeting date is not listed on here, but it will be the fourth Thursday of June. And with that, we will conclude this meeting.